Going live.
All right, we'll call to order this meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education. All members are present, 4 in person, 1 electronically, and if you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and are there any proposed amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to the superintendent's remarks. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Good evening, and thanks for tuning in to our March Board of Education meeting. This week is the last week prior to spring break, and then we head into the final 8 weeks of the school year. The final leg of the year is always a busy time, and despite the challenges of the pandemic, this year should be no different. Our numbers across the county continue to be low, and this hopefully will be the trend over the last 2 months of school. I want to congratulate the Woodford County High School wrestling team for capturing the regional championship a little over a week ago. We competed in the STEMI State on Saturday, and 2 wrestlers, Gavin Andreoni and Jackson Geiler, will be advancing to the state finals this weekend. Also want to commend our community activism class and FFA students for their donation drive to assist flood victims in eastern Kentucky. They made the deliveries on Sunday to 3 different counties. A special thanks to Dr. Amber Surgeon and Dr. Martha Jones for their efforts in coordinating this opportunity for our students. A quick legislative update. I know that that's on the agenda later, but I figured I'd go ahead and knock it out now. On just a few bills that will impact Kentucky education. KSBA does a great job providing information each week to board members and superintendents, so I'll just get a few high points. The first is House Bill 285, and this establishes a new tier of retirement benefits for teachers who begin working in January of 2022. Representative Ed Massey worked with many of the educational groups and legislators in drafting this legislation. It truly was a model of how you would introduce a piece of legislation that can have a big impact on people. It passed through the House. The Senate made some very minor adjustments to that and passed it, and now it is awaiting the governor's signature. So this is the 10-day veto period, so we will see if he signs that into law or if he vetoes it. House Bill 593, and that's the one that probably has garnered more attention than any other bill this session, and they combined a couple pieces of legislation into one. One was about open boundaries, open borders for districts, and the other one was the educational opportunity grants. Those were 2 separate pieces of legislation that they combined into one. The one that will probably, to me, can fundamentally change education are the educational opportunity grants piece of it, and that's where folks can get tax credits for donations to basically a scholarship fund, and then those scholarship funds can be applied to by families to attend either other public schools or private schools. This is something that we have fought against over the last several sessions. This is a new attempt, calling it an educational opportunity grant or account. And right now, it is scheduled to be in place for counties that have populations of 90,000 or more, which that's our 3 northern Kentucky counties. I think Campbell is in that, Fayette, Jefferson, Hardin, Warren, Davies. But what it does, it opens the door for it to be expanded in future sessions. That has passed out of the House and passed out of the Senate. When the House passed it, it had funding for all-day kindergarten, the Senate removed that piece of the legislation before sending it back to the House, and then it passed very narrowly in the House the second time. We anticipate that the governor will veto that, and then there will be an opportunity either on the 29th or the 30th for a veto override. My understanding is that they will add or promise all-day funding for kindergarten in exchange for a veto override. So it would not be surprising at all to see House Bill 560 or 593 take. Is it 593 or 563? I'm sorry, 563 become law. Again, right now it applies. Students can apply for the grants who reside in the counties that have 90,000 or more. The open boundaries piece, right now we have a mechanism to deal with that, and it's called the non-resident contracts. And you all approve those every month or almost every month. But there are some districts across Kentucky that don't have those. For example, an independent district may not have it with the county district in which they are located. Or it may not be open. It may be a one-to-one. So that we'll take one of yours, but you can only take one of ours. So this is an attempt to make that much more open. Right now, I think Mr. Wells told me we have 13 non-resident contracts. So we already have a pretty good agreement with almost everybody around us. I wish they had dealt with it through that as opposed to dealing with it this way. There are still a lot of unknowns, and if you heard some of the testimony about the bill when it was debated on both floors, a lot of the questions simply can't be answered right now. And the assurance is that they would be answered in the interim because it would not take effect until July of 2022. So that was part of the selling point as well, is that they have time to work out some of the details. That to me is a little scary. But again, that's one that can fundamentally change things. And then the last one that I'll talk briefly about is Senate Bill 128. And that is a bill that would allow students K through 12 to have a supplemental educational year. Each district would be required to have a plan for how this would be implemented. Families must declare their intent by May 1st, and then boards must make their decision on whether to allow it or not by June 1st. The interesting thing about the decision for the boards is it's all or none. So you do not get the opportunity to look at each individual situation. Either you say yes to all or you say no to all. That puts, I think, boards in a very, very difficult spot, because if you say no, students then will look to go elsewhere that may allow it. And so there are a large number of questions that surround this bill, particularly when you get to the high school age for students. Anything below high school, the student would essentially be repeating the grade that they are in. However, if you have high school students that have passed all their classes, do you allow them to retake the courses to maybe get a better grade? Those are questions that have to be answered. The bill specifically mentions graduated seniors who want to return. So a student could technically go through graduation, have met all the requirements, and come back to school for a supplemental year. And so we would have to sort through what that would look like for those particular students. So again, there are a number of questions that I think we have to sort through. We are hoping that the Department of Education and KSBA may provide some guidance on maybe some points that we need to consider as it relates to the plan that we put in place. Obviously, you want to develop the plan fairly soon so that parents would know how it's going to be administered before they make their declaration. However, we're probably not gonna know officially whether it's into law, until the 1st of April. And then parents have to tell us by the 1st of May. So, again, those are 3 bills that I would point out to you, that I think we have had quite a few discussions about. I know as a district staff and as a group of superintendents. So, if you want to wait till the end, we'll take questions. I'll take questions, or I can take questions now. But,
Let's just do it now. That's fine. I have a couple of questions. What would if they did fund all-day kindergarten, what would that look like for Woodford County?
yeah, it would be about $500,000. I think the key piece on that, and I think if that were to happen, I think that would free up some much needed money for staff raises.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could easily be applied to our staff, and I think very deservedly so. To me, though, one of the keys on that is right now it is in statute that kindergarten students are funded at a 0.5. If they don't change the language in that statute and only make it an appropriation, that appropriation can go anytime they want. And they could shift that back to school districts at any time. And so I do think we have to be mindful of that. And that is one of the things that I think we need to be very vocal about and push for. We've been asking for funding for all-day kindergarten for 20 years. And now all of a sudden they magically find the money when they want to get a bill through. And so I think we have to be mindful of that. But to me, one of the keys is that piece of the statute that talks about half-day funding for kindergarten students really needs to be codified so that it makes it less likely for that money to be pulled back.
Okay. And do you know how much the scholarship amount is? Have they?
It can be capped. It's going to be capped initially at $25 million. So the donations cannot exceed $25 million in the first year. Now that will grow over time.
Yeah.
And
just continue to pull and pull
yes.
and pull.
And the one thing that, and we've talked about this with legislators for a number of years, we really need to look at tax modernization here in Kentucky. We've got to figure out a way to generate additional revenue because we have a revenue problem. And in this session alone, there are another $650 million in tax credits in the legislation that is being proposed or passed. So that's concerning because that's a lot of money to say we don't need.
Okay, and then my last question is on Senate Bill 128.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the kind of news publication about that has been with regard to athletics.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work for a returning senior if they turn 19?
If they turn 19 prior to August 1st, according to the bylaws of the KHSAA, they would not be eligible. So as long as they are still 18 on August 1st, they would be eligible to compete for a 5th year.
When did the date change on our kindergartners? That was within like the last...
Probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say...
I'm going to say 2017, maybe 2016.
So, okay. And then on that, I mean, obviously if you're looking at it for athletics, that's one thing. But if it is for some of our younger students that have kind of just missed out and are falling into that gap that we've seen, what are your thoughts on the implementation? I know we'd have to look at staffing and we'd have to look at building room, and it's a multifaceted.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know that you can fully know how it would impact you until you see the numbers.
Yeah.
And see what that would actually do. If the full day funding for kindergarten doesn't go through, then if you have repeating kindergartners, what does that mean? Do you only get half day funding for them for a second year?
Right.
So there's several pieces that have to be considered, but really until you get a sense of how many people and at what grade level and at what school, it would be very difficult to say this is the impact that there might be on staffing.
So when we're reaching out to our legislators, we want to make sure to encourage them to fully fund kindergarten, not by an appropriation.
It needs this. They can do it through an appropriation, but the accompanying statute needs to be changed as well. And I don't have that KRS in front of me, but there is a statute that clearly states that kindergarten students are funded at 0.5.
Okay. Ms. Springate?
I just would say thank you. I do think and agree that KSBA does a really, really good job of getting the information out there. Kentucky Youth Advocates also does a really good job legislation-wise with updates. I think that it would be important for us to probably have a work session once we know what actually passes, what that looks like, and what the details are. And then I was just going to say that Renee Shaw is having a panel discussion tonight about House Bill 563, so that should be something really interesting. I just think it's, until we know exactly what is in there and exactly what we're going to be required to do, it's hard to kind of play the guessing game, and you don't want to confuse folks about what we're doing or not doing or what's going on. But I do appreciate the updates, and hopefully we'll be done in time to watch that tonight.
Well, and what they did too on 563 is because some very some of your smaller independent districts, the open border piece would benefit them. By combining that with another piece of legislation, then it really put people in a difficult spot, because you may be in favor of one piece of this, but this other piece you're not in favor of. And so how can you advocate? I can't, because it's all in one bill. I can't just advocate for one piece of it. And so that made it challenging this time.
And to that point, Ms. Springate, that will be online tomorrow. I double checked because I didn't get a chance to DVR KET for tonight, but it will be posted online so we can get the link tomorrow too. But yes, I think that'll be a lot of information. Ms. Richardson.
Nope, nothing, thank you.
Ms. McHale.
No, nothing else for me, thank you.
Ms. Glass.
No more questions, thanks.
All right. Then we heard Mr. Martello's treasurer's report last week. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Can I just ask, Mr. Hawkins, were you done with your update after that? I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Ms. Cooper, are there any public comments? Ms. Cooper says that there are no public comments for tonight. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which was provided by Mr. Hawkins last week. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda passes 5-0. We'll move on to the regular agenda. And Mr. Hawkins presented that last week. Is there a motion to accept notification of personnel matters?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to accept notification of payment of bills?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 19th, 2021, January 25th, 2021, February 2nd, 2021, February 22nd, 2021, February 22nd, 2021 at 6 p.m., February 23rd, 2021.
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. The Safe School grant projects that Mr. Martello and Mr. Hawkins presented last week. It's a grant offering us some great opportunities to update our schools. Is there a motion to approve the Safe Schools Grant Project?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item E is selection of the board attorney. Is there a motion to hire a specific candidate among the 5 that we interviewed?
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Richardson?
I'd like to make a motion that we continue with Grant Chenoweth.
There's a motion by Ms. Richardson to continue retaining Grant Chenoweth as our attorney. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. McHale. Is there any discussion? And at this point, there can be discussion on any of the candidates or how you did in assessing those. We'll go around. Ms. Springate?
No, thank you.
Ms. Richardson?
I have no further questions or discussion.
All right, thank you. Ms. McHale?
I have no further discussion either.
Ms. Glass?
I don't have any discussion.
The board has, or the chair has none. So we will vote. All those in favor of retaining Grant Chenoweth and Porter, I can get my Porter out. And the firm?
Porter, Banks, Baldwin, and Shaw.
Porter, Banks, Baldwin, and Shaw. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Next item is create the charge for the Superintendent Selection Committee. And Mr. Martin is here if you want to give us an introduction and kind of guide us through that, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, prior to that, just to piggyback on what Mr. Hawkins says on House Bill 563, Eric Kennedy has informed us that on Kentucky Tonight, which is on KET at 8 p.m. tonight, there'll be 6 guests on with Renee Shaw to talk about that specific bill. So that should be a lively discussion if any of you are available for the 8 o'clock viewing. So back to the mission at hand here. The board policy that you have adopted says when there is a superintendent vacancy that the board will create the criteria to guide the selection committee, the screening committee, to consider during their consideration of candidates for the position. So that is why we have this item on the agenda tonight. I know that we had a virtual forum, or attempted to have a virtual forum, and we also had good participation in the online survey of over 600 people responding to that. So that was a good input there. So I provided the board with 2 or 3 examples of what other districts have decided their criteria to be. That will give you some idea of the format. It certainly doesn't require you to adopt anything that they adopted. But I think you got some good input from the survey. So Ms. Bradley, I think we'll just open that up to discussion.
Okay. And we can go around on that. I was actually trying to pull up the charges, but I will look for that. Ms. Springate, do you have any input?
No, I mean, I would assume there's the survey that we got, we're going to discuss that somewhat, and we would, take some of the criteria for the charge from that, according to what's important for our local folks that took the time to take the survey.
For sure, yes.
Ms. Bradley, if I could be permitted to sort of summarize what I saw in the online survey, would that be appropriate to give that?
Yes, please. And what were the attachments called that you sent with the examples of the charge?
I didn't understand the question.
you said that you had sent us a couple examples. I'm having a hard time putting my fingers on that.
I sent one from Boone, one from Shelby, and I believe one from Kenton.
Okay.
I think those were just the questionnaires
The
that you
surveys.
had looked
Oh,
at
okay.
last
Okay.
time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just summarize what the survey revealed, and that doesn't mean that the board is required to adopt everything from that, but I would say, if I had to paraphrase that the community that responded wanted someone who has a strong background in the classroom and the administrative setting with exceptional expertise in student achievement, curriculum development and implementation, and budget management. I believe the way I looked at that was priority that was established by your clientele that responded to the survey. Obviously, that doesn't take into account other things that you may want as criteria, like a strong ethical background, visible in the school and community. I think there was a question on there about the amount of time that a superintendent should be visible. And that was a fairly common response of about 70% saying fairly visible at all times. Good work ethics, being able to communicate effectively with community, in the community with all constituencies. All of those are fairly common attributes and that boards adopt when they instruct their screening committees to be looking for qualities in a superintendent.
Yes, and I thought that the question regarding college and career readiness was
Yes,
that was a strong answer from the community over a big sampling of the.
it is. They concentrated on life skills, career paths, and science and math programs.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, the life skills, which for those that are watching include the personal finance and family issues. That was the biggest vote getter of what our community feels that needs to be a good area of emphasis when asked to pick the top 3 choices. Another one on the priority need or challenge, and that was attracting and keeping effective teachers, received a huge amount of emphasis from the community. So if we could incorporate those things into our charge, I think that would be good.
And Danny, on that same page, I think probably, something we absolutely want to focus on is the social emotional needs.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think that's something that the community has said over and over, both with the survey and outside of the survey.
Well, and also with our principals coming last week and pointing out the need for that in our schools. I think that's absolutely very important. You're right. We can go around the opposite direction this time. And Ms. Glass, do you have any other thoughts or comments that you want to pull out?
Of course, you're going to start with me now.
I can come back, Ms. McHale.
Come back.
Oh, come on. No, I think those are the important topics for me. Were really on the STEM life skills, career pathways, the social emotional needs. I think that, so I guess maybe just a question. This agenda item, are we creating this document now to kind of guide then the interviews and what they're going to focus on for the interview? Is that?
I'll let Mr. Martin answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, what this is that it keeps the committee focused on the criteria established by the Board of Education. It's my job in these meetings to make sure that the committee does stay focused on the criteria established by the Board of Education. If they start getting sideways and start getting into areas that really have no bearing on what they should be doing, then I bring them back to center and instruct them to get back to the criteria that was established by the board. Obviously, each one of these people on the committee come from a different perspective. You know, the parents are coming from one perspective, your employees are coming from a different perspective. So there's going to be some modification a little bit with each one of these members of the committee, but the overarching umbrella that I will use with the committee is it can't be in violation or in contrast to the criteria developed by the Board of Education.
So that would mean then that sort of skeleton list of questions that we even sent out as the survey, that kind of becomes your guide for the interviews, and then you're really gonna kind of measure the answers based upon what we're looking for from the survey results. Am I understanding that correctly?
First of all, the committee will be deciding on all the information that's going to be presented to them tomorrow night in their meeting of the applicants, 5 folders of information, a lot of information. They're going to be deciding who they want to speak with over the next week or two. And also, I gave the instruction to the committee to come up with topics, maybe sample questions that they would like to ask those people. So, with the criteria being established by the board tonight, I can lead the committee into combining some questions or have standalone questions of the criteria that the board is going to establish, so that they can make that judgment of the value of that question when they interview specific candidates.
Okay, so then I would have no other comments. I mean, I think that the community responses are pretty clear cut in what they want in most of these answers. So I'm hopeful, following kind of this guideline, I wouldn't have any other questions or comments.
Yeah, and I think that Mr. Martin captured a lot of what is recounted in the surveys here. Ms. Richardson?
No, I would like to see a little more emphasis. I know that the agri-science just came up with like 9.6% of answers or responses on here, but I would like to see there be a little bit of emphasis on the agri-science, because it does kind of lead into business skills as well as life skills and career pathways and trades. So I would like to see something in there that has to do with agri-science. We are a farming community. I think that there's a little bit, once you get out into the county, there's fewer people in a wider, or there's as many people in a wider space, but they kind of don't typically respond to these type of things because they are out in the evenings, they're farming, they can't get to their computers. And I know that our agri-science department has always been big in Woodford County, but I'd like to see us be equally as successful as counties that surround us, like Jessamine County with our FFA and things like that. So I'd kind of like to see that be something in there, somebody that advocates for that as well.
And I agree with that. We do have a great ag community here, and maybe adding a line, Mr. Martin, that a candidate who embraces career pathways and vocational education as well as agri-science and other CTE. I think that's
right. We could add that to the STEM curriculum and just add that to that. Would be fine.
I think that'd be great. Ms. Springate?
Thank you.
Sure.
No, I do think it would be important to go ahead and give the survey results to the committee members so they can kind of look through and see what the questions were and see what the responses were. You know, some of them are fairly close, and then I think how Angel or whoever did this included the other stuff at the back is very useful information. So I think that would be important. Will they get a copy of this, Mr. Martin?
It got a little bit garbled. I'm sorry. Ms. Bradley, could you?
She wondered, she said she would like to make sure that the screening committee gets the survey results, that she thinks it would be helpful for them to see what the community emphasized and where the...
Oh, that would be fine.
Yeah,
yes.
We can send that, I can send that out to the committee tonight. I will make a note. All right, is there anything further that anyone would like to add on this topic? Hearing none, and Mr. Martin, if you feel like you're clear, we will move on to the next item.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you for your help. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, there is no old business to go over. The next item is board member communications. I've had a couple communications with Mr. Martin just in facilitating invitations to meetings, and then also at the training for the screening committee. And then I did call Mr. Chenoweth today to check in on how to best handle the agenda item for selection of a board attorney, if we needed the motion first or if we could have discussion first. I just wanted to be clear on that so that we were in compliance. Are there any other board member communications that anyone would like to share? Hearing none, we will move on to the discussion items. Mr. Hawkins, I feel like we probably covered the legislative update. And then we'll move on. Information items we've done. And is there a need for an executive session? There is not. And no other business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Just one thing. Mr. Wells, do you know when we may get that?
I don't know when it's coming in. I've not heard.
And I know Grant has been working with us. We got information on Friday afternoon. The tennis courts where we normally participate, they're going to start work on demolition and redoing those starting next week. And so we need a place to practice. And so Coach Watts had been working with Pisgah Presbyterian Church. They have some courts, and we got the agreement to work with them Friday afternoon. And so we've been diligently trying to go back and forth with Grant and then sending those results back to the church to make sure they're okay with the revisions. It will take board approval. So we may need a 5-minute Google Meet for you all to approve that. Sometime in the next few days, once we get that taken care of, we were hopeful we were going to get it before the meeting tonight so that we could have taken care of it this evening. But it's just simply an agreement that allows us to utilize the courts.
Is that something, this is probably a question for Grant. Grant, can the board authorize Mr. Hawkins to act on our behalf on that matter?
You can. I hate asking you to do that without you all having seen the agreement at all. It's a fairly short agreement that really is just you as the user of the property would be agreeing that basically you're responsible for the conduct of your employees, the kids, parents, and whomever else might come on the church property in relation to your use of the tennis courts, because essentially they're not getting any to take responsibility for essentially the conduct of anybody who is there because of the school hosting the practices on that property. That's the biggest piece. And if somebody, student or parent or employee, caused damage to the church property, there's a provision.
Oh, you muted, Grant.
That's weird.
It happened when you said if they cause damage.
If anybody from the school district, parent or sibling or somebody that happened to be there caused some damage, horseplaying or whatever, that you all would be essentially agreeing that if we cause the damage, we will take care of it, that the church doesn't have to go into the hole because of something that our people did while on their property. They're trying to be a good community member, and it's just basically saying we'll take responsibility for any injuries or damage that get caused by our use of church property. If you all are good with that, sight unseen on the agreement, yes, you can vote to amend the agenda to add that item on an emergency declaration by the chair or by 3 members, and to authorize the superintendent to execute that when it's approved by me as to the final form.
Is there any discussion on that? Ms. Springate?
No, it sounds like we can add that to the agenda one of 2 ways. Do you have a preference, Grant?
I don't. It's just your policy allows for that to be either way. So if Ms. Bradley wants to say that it's a emergency matter in the sense you didn't have advance warning of this needing to be addressed, then she can add it as an agenda amendment, and then you all can entertain a motion to approve.
Okay.
Sounds like we just need to.
So we'll add agenda item G, and that will be to authorize Mr. Hawkins in conjunction with Mr. Chenoweth to enter into an agreement with Pisgah Presbyterian Church for use of the tennis courts while ours are under renovation.
I would just say for the spring of 2021.
Okay. Did you catch that, Angel? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I will add that as agenda item G. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That will
you.
also,
Yeah, we'll take care of that then, because we, like I said, and I appreciate Grant getting it back to us so quickly. But we literally found out Friday afternoon.
sure,
So,
and those things come up, that happens, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to not have the expense of having another meeting when it's something that you can easily take care of and obviously have lots of experience in having done this. All right, so the motion is approved. Now, is there anything else, Mr. Hawkins?
I just have a couple questions.
All right, Ms.
Just a
McCown.
couple little random questions for you, Mr. Hawkins.
Random questions, okay.
So the date for graduation, May 29th, correct? Is that tentative or?
That is a tentative date.
Okay.
It is very dependent on, again, we sent the survey out
Yeah,
today, so
it came out today, yeah.
encourage all your friends
I know.
to complete that
Everybody
survey.
in first block that I saw was working.
So we want to get that survey back, because that will give us some very helpful information that
Right.
if we are able to host it at the arena, then May 29th would be the date.
Gotcha. And I know you don't coordinate prom, but is there, you know, everybody's heard, you know, we are having a prom or not. So do you have any idea if there's any sort of planning going on? Or
They are looking at what options can be
Okay.
may be accomplished.
Gotcha.
It's very, very difficult to do something indoors with a crowd of that size, and a lot of it comes down to contact tracing.
Absolutely.
That if you end up with a positive case, you could very well quarantine several hundred, and the timing of that, as we get into the spring, then you get into AP exams, you get into final exams, you get into graduation, and not having students quarantined where they're not able to do those things. So it's somewhat complex. So I think they are trying to look to see, is there something that can be done, even if it's at a reduced number or a reduced group. But I know that the school has been meeting to talk about that, to determine what might take place.
Right, yeah. I know a lot of students and parents who are having questions, so thank you.
Sure.
That's the benefit to having you here, is to keep our issues for you guys in mind. Thank you for bringing that up.
Of course.
All right, does anyone else have anything? Then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to point out it is 6:45.
We're gonna make it to the KT show.
That's right. Thank you all.